Many of these trees were my friends.
He's lying. Well, not about the friends part. That part is in the books. But in the Two Towers, Treebeard actually knows already all about the woods being chopped by Saruman. He's wise and keeps good track of the forest. And in the book, it's so much more glorious because the Ents themselves decide to go to war at the Entmoot. And the whole way to Isengard, they are singing the song of the destruction for Isengard. It is so glorious. Don't get me wrong, I love the movie and how the movie does it, but Treebeard knows about these trees. And the whole book section just makes you want to stand up and cheer and root for the Ents. It's so glorious. So I made a video last week about the look of the Ents, like what they physically look like. They are some of the weirdest creatures in the Tolkien universe. But this video, I want to talk about their personalities and how I think it's a beautiful depiction of patience and not freaking out over every little bit of news that comes in. I love their long-term approach on life, their desire to listen to a good story, and their resolve. And chapter 4 of the Two Towers was just filled with so much good stuff that it's hard to synthesize it all into 2 essays. But some of the essay is going to be going through the Ents and comparing the book to the movie, but really this is just a character study on the Ents and me kind of doting and like talking about how much I love them. Because they are fascinating beings. And the lines that they have are fleshed out by Treebeard, and it makes him so brilliant and wise and passionate and everything else. They are incredible. And for those of you who don't know, I am reading Lord of the Rings for the first time and publishing my thoughts in the form of video essays. So if you're into book analysis, you should definitely subscribe, because I'm not just going to go through Lord of the Rings, but I'm going to go through Sanderson, George R.R. Martin, a little C.S. Lewis with Narnia, and some of the other great fantasy writers. I'll probably read Dune pretty soon. So make sure you subscribe. And if you want, you can also become a member for some members-only content, as well as early access to videos. When we have enough members, I'll start launching some book clubs too, just so that you can kind of read through Lord of the Rings or any other books that you love with other people who are big Tolkien nerds and just nerd out about the whole entire series or about whatever you're reading. But for now, let's just talk about the personality of the Ents. Treebeard at first, he doesn't chase Merry and Pippin down. Rather, he knows immediately that they are not orcs from their voices. Merry and Pippin go up on the hill, this little stone wall hill kind of thing, and Treebeard is there just kind of sunbathing. And this is what the text says about their first meeting. "The wind's changing," said Merry. "It's turned east again. It feels cool up here." "Yes," said Pippin. "I'm afraid this is only a passing gleam, and it will all go gray again. What a pity. This shaggy old forest looks so different in the sunlight. I almost felt I liked the place." "Almost felt you liked the forest? That's good. That's uncommonly kind of you," said a strange voice. "Turn round and let me have a look at your faces. I almost feel that I dislike you both. But do not let us be hasty. Turn around." A large knob-knuckled hand was laid on each of their shoulders, and they were twisted round, gently but irresistibly. Then 2 great arms lifted them up. Now at Treebeard, as we learn in the next chapter, where I just kind of finished reading, is the oldest living thing under the sun. This is what Gandalf says, but it's like a little ominous because he also talks about his encounter with the Balrog in that chapter and how he went down to the deep places of the earth where there are untold horrors. And there's likely older and fouler things in the deep places of the earth than Treebeard, although he's not foul. From the moment you meet him, he's actually incredibly charming. Him and Pippin kind of just getting like a compliment off. They talk about poetry and add lines to the Ents' poems for how they know what beings are. It's just an incredible first encounter between the two. Now, after they attempt to introduce each other, the famous movie line, "Don't be hasty," is prominent in the book as well. And it typifies everything that the Ents do. They don't make decisions fast, they don't tell stories fast, and they don't even listen fast. There's this whole section in this chapter where Merry and Pippin are about to sleep in the house of Treebeard, and he kind of just like lays down and lets them tell their story, and he listens so inquisitively, and he like asks them so many questions. He wants the story to go longer. It's just so lovely. But this is the first bit of profundity that I loved from Treebeard. This is what the book says. But you are hasty folk, I see, said Treebeard. I am honored by your confidence, but you should not be too free all at once. There are Ents and Ents, you know. Or there are Ents and things that look like the Ents, but ain't, as you might say. I'll call you Merry and Pippin if you please, nice names. For I am not going to tell you my name, not yet at any rate. A queer, half-knowing, half-humorous look came with a green flicker into his eyes. For one thing, it would take a long while. My name is growing all the time. And I've lived a very long, long time. So my name is like a story. Real names tell you the story of the things they belong to in my language. In the old Entish, as you might say. It is a lovely language, but it takes a very long time to say anything in it because we do not say anything in it unless it is worth taking a long time to say and to listen to. First, I think his business about not rushing to figure out who each other are is kind of wise. But then I also love the idea that he says his name is like a story and it's growing longer by the year. I can't even conceptualize something like that in language, but Tolkien must have just been some kind of linguistic theory that he was developing and that maybe he was just trying to implement this with Treebeard. How incredible would it be if your name told your story like that? It's like something from Arrival. It's one of my favorite movies ever. It's like how a higher form of language lets you perceive the world differently. I think that's called like the Sapir-Whorf theory in linguistics. And I feel like this is kind of one of those instances where it's like your language shapes your reality. So if in Entish they have this linguistic idea that your name tells your story, it seems like it'd be possible, but it's so beyond my conception that I just want to know more about that. I would love to learn how to speak Entish. I think this is the language that I like the most in this book so far. And how incredible would it be if we were not so hasty to learn everything as fast as we could? It's a great little line from Treebeard. I think Treebeard represents a little of Tolkien himself, if I'm honest. Someone who doesn't seem to reject the outside world, but is wise and not controlled by it. He makes his decisions with time. And it's funny too because the name J.R.R. Tolkien tells a story of his story. And Ents are such story-oriented beings. There's another line that he says later, I don't know about sides, I go my own way. But your way may go along with mine for a while. But you speak of Master Gandalf as if he was in a story that had come to an end. Your way may go along with mine for a while. It's as if Tolkien is talking about the things in life that come and go, but how you still must go your own way. I think it's a huge deal for the Ents, that they are more patient even than the elves because they seem to be around for longer and that they just can't die quite as easily. So most of the Ents seem older to me than the elves. Again, I'm reading for the first time, so I'm kind of just assuming that here. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the elves are immortal, so they're obviously older. But to me, it's like there's no elf alive in Middle-earth that has lived long enough to see maybe Treebeard. I feel like there was older Ents that maybe died off in battle or something like that. I wonder who the oldest elf is. I'd guess Galadriel, but I don't know about that. But anyway, because they are old, they've seen people and kingdoms rise and fall. And they've seen the steadiness of the world. And I think this is the kind of source, I think this is a kind of source of real wisdom, if I'm honest. To be able to see the chaos around the world and to know that there is a balance between good and evil. And that you might have a part to play, but that times will also come and go and seasons will come and go. I think this is such a valuable lesson to learn in life too. That there's a time and there's a place for everything. That we bend ourselves out of shape without maintaining any sort of long view on our lives. Now, our lives are significantly shorter than Ents, and that kind of makes every single minute of our lives even more valuable because we don't have a long time, but truly, to make the most of every moment, I think the Ents just have a beautiful depiction of weathering the storms that come your way. And there's another line that I'll talk about in a bit that has to do with that. But we can still have this view of things that matter in our short lives. And again, I'll talk about that in a bit, but I find the Ents to be this incredible being because they fight when they need to fight. They rest when they need to rest. They understand that there is a time and there is a place for everything. And that just because there are wars and bad leaders and tragedies in the world doesn't mean we should be overshadowed and overcome by those things and not just sit in the sun and soak up the moment as we can, as Treebeard's doing when we first meet him. But I don't know, he could also be eating too, photosynthesis. Who knows? Another thing that Ents and that Treebeard does that I cannot get out of my head is that he walks over 70,000 Ent strides. Now, this is niche, but the most I've ever gone that I can remember is somewhere close to like 40,000 steps in a single day where all I did was walk. It was a long hike. I covered maybe like 20, 25 miles that day. So let's say Treebeard's strides are 3 times longer than mine. He covered then around 100 to 150 miles at a day. Fangorn is huge. I love that he's getting all his steps in too. And his strength is something to marvel at as well. As he mentions it when they're marching to the war, he talks about how he is like, how trolls seem like they're strong, but they're nothing compared to the strength of Ents. And it's a really, really cool line. But then he goes on and gives one of my favorite lines in this entire book so far. He says, "There is naught that an old Ent can do to hold back that storm. He must weather it or crack." I mean, it's just brilliant. We go through life with all their trials and all the issues and all the difficult things that we have to go through. And that is the case with everyone else in the world as well. And so you have 2 options. You can weather it or you can crack, just like the Ents. And I also love that for the Ents, this is less about fighting the impending storm than it is just weathering it. Even the analogy of this being a storm means that it's something to be endured rather than fought. Now, we have this analogy in our cultures, I think, but I think some of the other analogies imply maybe like a war or a battle, or you're fighting against the dying light. You fight the things that are coming your way. But here, the Ents have this patience to just weather the storms that are coming in their lives, or they're cracked and broken by the storm. But this motif of patience in the whole Treebeard section isn't something that's just like a lack of action. Sometimes when I think of the most patient people in my life, I think of people who don't let anything get to them. But Treebeard isn't really like that. Or he might be, but he's also been stewing on some things for a long time and is finally letting off some steam for what has happened. Because in one section, where he talks about Saruman cutting down some of the forest, he gets infuriated. This is the passage in the books. "There is always a smoke rising from Isengard these days. Curse him, root and branch. Many of those trees were my friends, creatures I had known from nut and acorn. Many had voices of their own that are lost forever now. And there are wastes of stumps and brambles where once there were singing groves. I have been idle. I have let things slip. It must stop." Treebeard raised himself from his bed with a jerk, stood up and thumped his hand on the table. The vessels of light trembled and set up 2 jets of flame. There was a flicker like green fire in his eyes, and his beard stood out stiff as a great besom. He gets furious. Beware the wrath of a gentle man. This is that moment. If Treebeard is getting mad, you know you did something wrong. So I love that he's not generally someone who seems to lack control or patience, but Treebeard is also a being of great passion. He loves songs and tales, and he loves the forest. And if you mess with one of those things negatively, he will come for you. But if you participate in them with him and take joy in them, then he will befriend you. Think of how Merry and Pippin initially met him. They complimented the forest, not even knowing he was around. And then Pippin started participating in his poetry and took joy in it. Then they wanted to hear the story of Treebeard, and Treebeard wanted to hear their story. It was a perfect first meeting because the hobbits seemed very keen on enjoying the things that Treebeard himself enjoys. So a friendship was quickly born. But for Saruman, who comes and goes and burns the forest, he wants to destroy him. And then they go to the Entmoot and have this whole discussion on whether or not they will go to war. And another part I found fascinating was there was this younger Ent there, Quickbeam, who already had his mind made up of what he was going to do and what he was going to decide during the Entmoot. So he takes them and goes to his own house with Merry and Pippin because he kind of thinks like the whole meeting is a waste of his time. Not, those are my words. I don't think he would really think that, but maybe he does. And this shows the difference of opinion that there are between the Ents. Some want to discuss and run, and others want to stand and fight, and Quickbeam knows what his mind is set on. He wants to fight for the Ents, and I love that. He's this younger Ent who is ready to go. And then in one of my favorite sections in this chapter, the Ents start singing their battle march. The book says, "Then with a crash came a great ringing shout. Rahum Ra. The trees quivered and bent as if a gust had struck them. There was another pause, and then a marching music began like solemn drums, and above, the rolling beats and booms, there welled voices singing high and strong. We come, with roll of drum, to runda, 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 rum." The Ents were coming, ever nearer and louder rose their song. We come, with horn and drum, to ra, nara, nara, narum. Bregalad, who is Quickbeam, picked up the hobbits and strode from his house. Before long, they saw the marching line approach. The Ents were swinging along with great strides down the slope toward them. Treebeard was at their head, and some 50 followers were behind him, 2 abreast, keeping step with their feet and beating time with their hands upon their flanks. As they drew near, the flash and flicker of their eyes could be seen. Home, home. Here we come with a boom. Here we come at last, called Treebeard, when he caught sight of Bregalad and the hobbits. Come, join the moot. We are off. We are off to Isengard. To Isengard. What a victorious march that they have. Imagine being able to witness this. Oh, I wish I was Merry and Pippin in this moment. And I love that they have the agency themselves to make the decision and go to war. But then Treebeard says that everyone will cool down a bit by nighttime, and that's kind of exactly what happens. And he has a thought that he shares in the movies as well, but the book is just so much better. He says this, "Of course it is likely enough, my friends," he said slowly. "Likely enough that we are going to our doom. The last march of the Ents. But if we stayed at home and did nothing, doom would find us anyway, sooner or later. That thought has long been growing in our hearts, and that is why we are marching now. It was not a hasty resolve. Now, at least the march of the Ents may be worth a song. Aye," he said. "We may help other people before we pass away. Still, I should have liked to see the songs come true about the Entwives. I should dearly have liked to see Fimbrethel again. But there, my friends, songs like trees bear fruit only in their own time, in their own way. And sometimes they are withered untimely." And I could talk for hours about this line, but some things are just kind of left better unsaid and just appreciated. Suffice it to say that I think this is such a beautiful idea, that the Ents are marching and Treebeard knows that they are likely marching to their end, but they are marching all the same. Because they know that just by sitting back, they will eventually meet their doom anyway. And this is so significant for the character of the Ents. They are patient creatures who love nature and trees and the sun and every bit of life. But if something threatens that, they will be roused. I love Treebeard here, that he knows to weather the storms and he doesn't freak out over the latest little bit of news. I love that he knows about the trees, and I love that he stages the Entmoot still out of wisdom so that the trees can have a choice for what their fate is. And I think this is a good lesson for us to all just kind of calm down in the middle of a storm and weather and endure it. For storms will come whether we like it or not. And you can weather it or crack. But make sure you like and subscribe to the channel for more unorganized thoughts on my first time read through Lord of the Rings. I'll see you in the next one.